Welcome to the Journey Up podcast. We believe living a life of authenticity and purposeful connection is the path to healing, transformation, and success. Join us each week as we authentically and unapologetically share the mysteries and challenges in life that make Black women worldwide powerful, resilient, successful, and creative. We'll explore topics such as cultural awareness, spirituality, wellness and healing, relationships, pathways to success, and ways to pursue higher levels of happiness. We won't hold back. So without further ado, let's discover what it means to journey inward, outward, and ultimately upward.
Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Journey Up podcast, your weekly source of inspiration and empowerment for a deeper journey of healing, transformation, and success. I'm your host, Najee Body Love, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. We have a fantastic episode planned, focusing on creating healthy boundaries and healthy self-care practices. Boundaries are essential for maintaining a healthy balance in our relationships, work, and personal lives. They help us protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being. If we don't set boundaries, we risk feeling overwhelmed, burned out, or even resentful. In this episode, we'll discuss boundaries and why they matter and share practical tips for setting them. We'll cover relationships, work, and self-care practices, so there's something here for everyone. Let's start by defining what boundaries are. Boundaries are the limits we set for ourselves and others regarding what is acceptable and unacceptable in our lives. They are crucial in personal relationships, work, and self-care. There are different types of boundaries. They can be physical, emotional, and time-based. Physical boundaries might include personal space and physical touch. Emotional boundaries involve protecting our emotions and mental health. Time-based boundaries relate to how we allocate our time and energy. You might need stronger boundaries if you often feel overwhelmed, burned out, or taken advantage of. Other signs include difficulty saying no, always putting others' needs before your own, or feeling guilty for taking time for yourself. I remember a time when I struggled with boundaries at work. I was saying yes to every project, working late into the night, and barely spending time with my family. I felt exhausted and disconnected. It wasn't until I set clear boundaries at work that I regained control of my time and energy. I started saying no to extra projects, set strict working hours, and took breaks when needed. It made a world of difference. I'm going to share a story that many of you might relate to. This story is about my client Karen, a young woman who spent years caught in the cycle of people-pleasing, always striving to be liked and meet others' demands. She couldn't say no and often found herself overwhelmed by the constant stream of requests from friends, family, and colleagues. But one day, Karen had a wake-up call that forced her to reevaluate her life and the people in it. This story is about her journey to set boundaries, prioritize her well-being, and discover a new way of living that brought her freedom, fulfillment, and peace. Let's dive in. Karen was known among her friends, family, and colleagues as the one you could always count on. Need someone to help with a last-minute project at work? Karen was your go-to. Want a favor without much notice? Karen never said no. She was the epitome of a people-pleaser, always putting others' needs before her own. But behind her warm smile and eager willingness to help, she felt an ever-growing sense of exhaustion. Each day, she woke up with less energy, dreading the next call or message that would demand more of her time and attention. The requests came from all directions. At work, her boss regularly asked her to stay late, knowing she'd never refuse. Her co-workers dumped extra tasks on her, assuming she could handle them. At home, her family relied on her for everything from grocery shopping to fixing the Wi-Fi. Her friends would frequently ask her to be the designated driver or organize their events, often without even a thank you. Karen's life was a series of obligations, and it was draining her. One morning, Karen woke up and felt a heaviness in her chest. It was as if a weight had settled on her heart and she couldn't shake it off. As she looked around her cluttered apartment, filled with other people's things she'd agreed to hold onto, she realized that no one was truly considering her well-being. She was the common denominator in all her relationships, and she was the one suffering from her inability to say no. That day, Karen decided it was time for a change. She started by evaluating the types of people she had in her life. She made a list of those who were positive influences and those who drained her energy. It was a sobering exercise. She realized that most of the people she surrounded herself with fell into the latter category. Next, Karen evaluated how she was spending her time and well-being. She noticed that almost all her energy was going toward fulfilling other people's needs, with very little left for herself. She decided to make her well-being a priority, even if it meant disappointing some people. This shift in focus was liberating but also terrifying. Setting clear boundaries and learning to say no was the hardest part. The people who were used to Karen's constant availability did not take kindly to the changes. Her boss was annoyed when she refused to work late without prior notice. Her co-workers were upset when she stopped doing their extra tasks. Her family complained that she was being selfish when she declined their requests for favors. Her friends were shocked when she said she couldn't always be the designated driver. Despite the backlash, Karen stuck to her new boundaries. She learned to be more mindful of where she focused her energy, choosing to spend time on activities and people that brought her joy. She started practicing yoga and meditation to help manage stress and find inner peace. She also began seeking out friendships and relationships with those who respected her boundaries and valued her as a person, not just a resource. Over time, the negative people in Karen's life started to drift away. They no longer had a willing source to drain energy from. Although this transition was painful, losing friends and feeling isolated, Karen knew it was for the best. She realized that if she didn't make these changes, she would continue to be taken advantage of and eventually burn out completely. As she freed up her energy and time, Karen discovered new opportunities. She joined a local book club where she met like-minded people who shared her interests. She volunteered at a community garden, finding joy in working with her hands and connecting with nature. Most importantly, she had the energy to pursue her own passions and dreams, something she hadn't felt in years. The journey to reclaiming her life was tough and often lonely. There were moments when she questioned whether she was doing the right thing, especially when those she used to consider friends grew distant. But in the end, Karen knew she had made the right choice. She was healthier, happier, and surrounded by people who truly cared about her well-being. If Karen hadn't taken those difficult steps, her life would have continued down the same exhausting path. She would have remained the go-to person for everyone else's problems, neglecting her own needs and desires. By learning to set boundaries and say no, she reclaimed her life, finding fulfillment and contentment in the process. Before we dive into setting boundaries in relationships and at work, let's talk about why many of us find it hard to set boundaries in the first place. Often, it's because we want to be liked, to belong, to be accepted, or not to be oppressed or ostracized. Let's explore these reasons and the consequences of not setting boundaries. Many people avoid setting boundaries because they fear rejection or conflict. They might worry that if they say no, they'll be considered difficult or uncooperative. There's a common tendency to be a people pleaser. You might say yes to everything to be liked or accepted. This can lead to overcommitting and neglecting your own needs. Social and cultural pressures, especially for women of color, can make setting boundaries challenging. There's often an expectation to be self-sacrificing, nurturing, or enduring certain behaviors without complaint. When we don't set boundaries, the results can be detrimental. You might experience burnout, resentment, or even health issues. Relationships can suffer due to unmet expectations, and you may feel disempowered or out of control. Ultimately, not setting boundaries can affect your overall quality of life. Okay, so let's stop here for a quick break to talk about Journey Up Publishing, a subsidiary of Journey Up Wellness that specializes in publishing books that inspire, awaken, and empower Black women. Be sure to check out our latest books, Let Go of Your Butt, A Woman's Guide to Loving Herself to Full Potential and Possibility, Ascensions, Whispers of the Soul, and The Path and the Power, a soulful exploration of self-love. Don't wait another minute. Be sure to stop by the website journey-up.com to purchase your copies. You'll be glad you did. Boundaries are crucial in personal relationships, whether with family, friends, or romantic partners. Without boundaries, we can end up in unhealthy dynamics that drain our energy and cause stress. To set boundaries in relationships, start by identifying your needs and limits. Communicate them clearly to those around you. It's essential to be respectful but firm. For example, if you need alone time, let your partner know when and why it's important to you. Consistency is vital. Don't send mixed signals. Setting boundaries can be challenging, especially if you fear rejection or conflict. You might feel guilty for asserting your needs. The key is to remember that setting boundaries isn't about rejecting others. It's about protecting yourself. If you feel uncomfortable, try using I statements like, I need some time alone to recharge. This makes it less confrontational. Consider thinking about a relationship where you need to set or strengthen boundaries. What makes you uncomfortable or drains your energy? Take a moment to reflect and consider how you'd approach the conversation to set clear boundaries. Now let's talk about boundaries at work. Work can be a significant source of stress, especially if you need to set limits. You might work overtime, take on too many tasks, or sacrifice your personal time. To set work boundaries, establish precise working hours and stick to them. Learn to say no to extra tasks if they're not in your job description. Delegate when possible. Avoid checking work emails outside of office hours and take regular breaks during the day. Boundaries in personal life are just as important. This can include social commitments, technology use, and self-care routines. For example, set limits on how much time you spend on social media, or create a routine that includes regular exercise and relaxation. To create a boundary setting plan, list the areas where you need more boundaries: relationships, work, and personal life. Then identify specific boundaries for each area and write them down. This will help you stay accountable and on track. Before we wrap up, let's recap the key points. We discussed the importance of boundaries and how to set them in relationships, work, and personal life. Remember, setting boundaries is a form of self-care and self-respect. It's okay to say no and prioritize your own needs. I encourage you to take the first step in setting healthy boundaries. It might be challenging initially, but worth it in the long run. You deserve to live a balanced, fulfilling life without stress and overwhelm. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it with others who might benefit from learning about boundaries. Remember to subscribe while you are at it. I'd love to hear your experiences with setting boundaries. Feel free to reach out with your stories or questions for future episodes. Thank you for listening to the Journey Up podcast. I appreciate your support and am excited to continue this journey with you. Until next time, remember to stay true to yourself and take care of your well-being. Know that you are loved. The universe resides within you, and love is your superpower. Ashe.
Thank you for joining us for another uplifting episode and supporting the Journey Up platform. A very special thanks to our super producers who make it possible for us to reach you every week. Our deepest hope is to be the fuel that powers your dreams and aspirations as you endeavor the journey inward, outward, and upward. You can find us on Twitter at JourneyUp1, on Instagram at JourneyUpInspiration, on Facebook at JourneyUp1, and on TikTok at JourneyUpInspiration. The Journey Up podcast and its shows are written by Najee Badu Love, produced by Kimberly Banks and Najee Badu Love. Our editors and super producers include Najee Badu Love, Kimberly Banks, and Angela Burris. Music producer Kimberly Banks, and our photographer is Roman Gabriel. Join us every Monday as we provide you with inspirational content, empowering interviews, and more amazing guests who align with our commitment to love, inspire, and encourage Black women around the world.